Good day, Forefront. My name is Reverend Venida. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am the pastor of teaching and community here. Thank you so much for being a part of this worship experience today. I'm so excited to be continuing our Dear Paul series. I initially wanted to thank everybody who played a role in our Pride Month celebration. I just want to clap it up. The month of June, the pride, the energy was so uplifting and so encouraging. So I just want to express gratitude for each person who planned, participated, organized, and helped us promote our queer community here at Forefront Church. So I'd like to invite us today as we talk about Dear Paul, what's up with all the body shaming, to imagine a world where body shaming does not exist. I invite us to imagine a world where there is no body oppression. I invite us to position ourselves today to think about what healing could actually look like, to think about what freedom and breaking the chains of body oppression could actually look like, where we have more joy, more confidence, more assurance to be all that God created us to be. And I invite us to take care of ourselves because we're talking about this topic. It could sort of activate various emotions. So just please take care of yourself in whatever way you feel is important to you. You are enough. You are enough. So I have a story about something that happened a couple of weeks ago. My father lives in an assisted living facility about a 20-minute walk away from me, and I decided to take a walk and visit him. Now, this was during one of those sweltering hot days. You remember how it was a couple of weeks ago? And it was so hot, but I decided to brave the elements to go visit my dad, to spend some time with him. Now, let's be clear. I wore something that was very appropriate for the weather, right? And I was very comfortable taking the walk over to see him. So when I arrived, there was someone who saw me and said, "Oh my gosh, you're wearing shorts. Wow, you look amazing. You look so sexy. You look like this, you look like that." So I have to tell you that I was taken aback. Because this person and I don't really engage like that. But as she began to talk, I realized that it was more about her than it was about me. She began to say that I could never walk down the street like that. She began to tell me that the only time that she could wear shorts is on vacation. And she was excited about the fact that she was traveling to Jamaica where she would actually get to wear her shorts. And the more she talked, the more I could see her feeling so unsettled about whatever it is she was going through. Maybe it was societal or familial expectations around what she should or should not wear. Maybe it was around messages that she had received. Maybe it was around advertisements and things of this nature. Maybe she was so sick of the catcalls and people commenting about her body. Whatever it was, I wanted to be able to encourage her in that moment. I wanted to be able to say, it's okay. You can break those chains. You could wear what you want to wear. You can be free. And I did say a little bit of that, but I was more interested in what she was saying than what I wanted to say to try to encourage her in that moment. I felt like she just needed to get something out. But I will tell you that my heart went out to her. And while I get it, I mean, I've been the victim of the male gaze, of catcalls, of inappropriate comments, and of other things. I just tried to align myself with her feelings in that moment. But then as I walked away, and after my visit with my dad, as I walked home, I started to feel enraged. Because I was so annoyed that this person just couldn't be free and wear what she wanted to wear and to be free in her own body. And then I began to reflect on some experiences and messages that I had about my body. Some things that people have shared with me that put me in a place of condemnation and feeling insecure and ashamed about my body, right? One particular person, for example, every time I would see them, oh, looks like you're putting on a little weight there. Another individual, I'm so happy you're finally gaining weight. You're getting curves. You're finally starting to look like a woman, Venida. Well, let's be clear, I was 39 years old when this comment came down. As a former Division I athlete, I was told I needed to lose weight in order for my times to be better, in order to run faster. I was half the size that I am right now. I also received comments about my hair, particularly when I decided to start wearing my hair naturally, and when I refused to wear a perm or use a perm, and as some people refer to as creamy crack, no judgment or anything like that. But I decided to stop and wear my hair naturally, not go natural, right, because my hair is already natural, right, but wear my hair naturally. I remember someone saying, oh my gosh, what happened to your hair? I also remember someone mentioning something about my gorgeous skin complexion, where, I thought I was kind of cute. Venida, you're so pretty for a dark-skinned girl, right? So all of these various comments to inflict all sorts of feelings, right? To try to get me to feel inferior about this body that God created. This body that should be valued and honored. And I'm sure that if we did a poll like one of my favorite radio personalities, Brian Lair from WNYC. I love it. Brian talks about, anyone a fan of Brian? He talks about doing informal, unofficial, thoroughly unscientific. So if we did an informal, unofficial, thoroughly unscientific poll, I'm sure I could go to each one of you, and we all would probably have a story or something to share about how someone made a comment or some advertisement made us feel inferior about our body, to make us feel like we were not enough. And then when that happens, we become stuck. We can't move forward. We can't have the joy that God gave us. We can't touch those lives. We can't be the light that Pastor Angela was just singing about, right? When we are weighed down by all this shame. So here's an example, and let's be clear, maybe some of us were on the receiving end, and then maybe some of us were inflicting the harm. It could go either way, and maybe this harm was based on criticizing someone for being too thin or too fat. Maybe the appearances related to your facial features or your skin conditions or body proportions. Or maybe there was discrimination around age, right? Where people would make comments about, you're too old to wear that, right? Or maybe you have experienced some sort of hair or body shaming related to clothing choices, and someone saying, well, you shouldn't have that on because of your body type. Or maybe there's food shaming where you've been criticized about how much you're eating or what you're eating. And maybe these messages started when you were young, and then you didn't receive any counter messages where someone shared something positive about who you are. And then, because you didn't receive any counter messages, you began to internalize these negative messages. And not only did you get them in childhood, but the internalized oppression stayed with you all throughout adulthood. And then you become, once again, stuck. So, all of this, even today, is having such a profound impact on our young people. And many of us are working on a grant to be able to receive funds so that we can address some of these issues within our young people of color, within our young people who are LGBTQIA+. This is a serious matter. Last year, the Senate Judiciary Committee held a hearing as part of a broader push to regulate social media platforms. And they were dealing with, of course, there were some body image messages and things of that nature. And they talked about it impacting the overall mental health and well-being of our young people. And I'm just going to go through some quick statistics. 60% of teen girls reported persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness in 2021, and this was a dramatic increase from previous years. Again, a serious matter. 1 in 3 high school girls seriously considered attempting suicide in 2021, up 60% since 2011. It's important to note that boys and those who are non-binary also face serious mental health challenges. There was a 2023 national survey. It said 12.3% of boys between the ages of 12 and 17 had diagnosed anxiety, compared to 20.1% of girls. And then 6% of boys had diagnosed depression versus 10% of girls. And then here's some other findings. Boys are less likely to report emotional distress, but may express it through aggression or withdrawal. Sadly, we are still socializing our boys to be quiet, to not express their feelings, to not share, right? And then they're also less likely to seek help, often due to stigma around vulnerability. And then there was a 2024 meta-analysis of over 16,000 non-binary youth. So if we're thinking about a meta-analysis, it's an examination of data from a number of different independent studies of the same subject. And then what they do with all of this data is that they determine certain trends. So here are the findings. Rates of depression were significantly higher than cisgender youth. If we're talking about cisgender, it means that someone identifies with the sex they were assigned at birth, all right? So there were anxiety symptoms were also elevated through though slightly less than depression. And then non-binary youth had higher lifetime suicidal ideation than cisgender youth and similar rates of self-harm to transgender youth. Now, many of you have heard about the Trevor Project. They're a not-for-profit organization that works on suicide prevention. Here are some of their findings, and this is the last set of findings. 46% of transgender youth and non-binary youth seriously considered suicide in the past year. 14% attempted suicide compared to 7% of cisgender LGBTQ youth, and then nearly 50% couldn't access the mental health care they wanted. These numbers are staggering, they're startling, and they also let us know how gender identity and societal expectations shape mental health risks. So, church, forefront, folks, United States, world, how do we get here? I feel like Deborah Cox. How did we get here? I just couldn't let that go. Because it's so serious, it's so serious. Well, we can look to Paul and many of the scripture verses that people use to inflict harm through body shaming. Many of these passages have generated discussion, controversy, and misinterpretation. So let's look at a few. And it's astounding that these ancient words have such a profound and negative impact still on us today. 1 Corinthians 9:27, but I punish my body and enslave it, so that after proclaiming to others, I myself should not be qualified. So Paul is using an athletic imagery to describe self-control and spiritual discipline. However, some have interpreted this as having a negative view, or we should have a harsh view of the body. All right? So he was writing this letter to the church at Corinth. He had worked with them for about 18 months. He was very, very close to them. And he wanted to be able to emphasize integrity in his ministry. He was focusing on himself and making sure his actions aligned with what his calling was supposed to be. So he had heard that this church was having some misunderstandings and things of that nature. So he was writing to encourage them, and in encouraging them, he wanted to speak about himself and what he was doing, right? Not about body shaming, right? Not about criticizing physical appearance. Let's look to 1 Timothy 2, 9 and 10. Timothy was a church leader, and Paul wrote to Timothy while he was in prison. And he wanted to be able to offer Timothy guidance and encouragement as he strengthened the church in Ephesus. And here's this verse in 1 Timothy 2, 9 and 10. The women should dress themselves in moderate clothing with reverence and self-control, not with hair braided or with gold, pearls, or expensive clothes, but with good works, as is proper for women who profess reverence for God. So on one hand, this could be a call for modesty. However, on the other hand, scholars are saying that many people have used this to police the appearance of women and how women dress, right? So it's important for us to think about what Paul was actually talking about within these verses. Perhaps it was a focus on ensuring that their beauty came from within and not on expensive clothes, and their determination of their faith should be focused on the inside and not the external. In other words, prioritizing an inner character. But I still find this interesting that two men are actually having conversations about women. I'm sorry, right? So that's something for us to question, think about, and this is all up for questioning. Amen? So let's look at 1 Corinthians 6 and 19. Do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit within you, which you have from God, and that you are not your own? So this could be affirming. I mean, Paul can be seen as promoting the fact that our bodies are holy. Our bodies are God's temple. Our bodies are sacred, right? And this has been interpreted to ensure that people are not honoring their bodies. People are looking at other people negatively, and they are causing people to have shame over their bodies because of how they treat their bodies or how their bodies are presented, as opposed to us thinking about honoring our bodies and stewardship over our bodies being sacred and holy and God's temple. And then finally, 2 Corinthians 11, verses 23 through 27, Paul writes these words. Paul recounts the physical toll of his ministry, including beatings and deprivation. And he goes on to say, I've worked much harder, being jailed more often, beaten up more times than I can count. And at death's door, time after time. I've been flogged five times with the Jews, 39 lashes, beaten by Roman rods 3 times, pummeled with rocks once. I've been shipwrecked 3 times and immersed in an open sea for a night and day. So this is often used as an excuse for us to shame our bodies, punish our bodies, enslave our bodies, bring our bodies under subjection. And it's not often talked about that Paul was actually speaking to critics with this particular verse. These are critics who wanted to promote their credentials and their status as being more important, right? And then body shaming somehow comes out of this. Because if you're not suffering, if you're not denying yourself, then are you really God's beloved, right? So Paul is saying, I'm not bragging here, but he is boasting in what he went through because it was all for the gospel. And he was pretty much saying that my power and strength don't necessarily lie in my credentials or my status. It lies in what I went through for the sake of the gospel. So that's something for us to keep in mind as it relates to what Paul was referring to with regard to these verses, right? He was sort of referring to resilience, not ridicule over the body. So if Paul's writings are known to be questioned. And if Paul's writings, in some instances like these and others, are known to be misinterpreted, then why are we body shaming in so many different ways? Why are we promoting body shaming over having a love for our bodies, because our bodies have been made in the image of God? And then when we do this, it makes people feel bad. It makes people feel inferior. It makes people, it prevents people from moving forward in the gifts and callings that God has given to them. And we've just talked about the statistics, which are startling. So if all of the shaming leads to all of these statistics, then it's something that we should re-examine and look more closely at, because it is so harmful. It leads to low self-esteem, dissatisfaction with the body. It prevents us from having healthy relationships, all of this shaming. Many people have anxiety and depression, and many people withdraw from society. And as I said, there's a lot of internalized shame, and there's a lot of negative self-talk. So last week, Haim preached about living our lives authentically, coming out of whatever closet we are in and fully embracing our true selves. Well, how can we do this when we still need to have some healing, right, as it relates to our bodies? So yes, this is a sermon about, dear Paul, what's up with that body shaming? And it's also a sermon about how we continue to heal, how we can continue to strengthen each other as we move forward. Because our body keeps score. Our body remembers. And when we're not dealing with the trauma and the harm that was inflicted upon us, we can inflict that harm onto others. There's actually a book called The Body Keeps Score. I know some of you are familiar with it. It's written by Bessel van der Kolk. And they go on to say this: traumatized people chronically feel unsafe inside their bodies. They learn to hide from themselves. So if we're attempting to build community here at Forefront, we can't hide from ourselves, right? It's important for us to know who we are, to live out ourselves authentically, and then be able to be free and then help strengthen others. Alice Walker wrote a novel called Possessing the Secret of Joy, and it explores themes of embodiment and trauma and healing. And within this book, one of the characters says this: I have the uncanny feeling that just at the end of my life, I am beginning to re-inhabit completely the body I long ago left. I want to encourage us today, if we've left parts of our body a long time ago, I'm just encouraging us to think about what healing could look like for us and what reclaiming our bodies fully could look like for us. How can we begin to completely re-inhabit our bodies as opposed to condemning and competing with others? I want to let you in on a secret as it relates to comparing. You will never be able to compare yourselves to anyone because you can't live anyone else's life. You can only live your own, right? And when you are looking at others and attempting to have the same type of body or life or something else that someone else has, then it prevents you from moving forward, right? In all that you have. So the question then today is, how can we heal? How can we reclaim our bodies? Here's another quote by van der Kolk. The challenge of recovery is to reestablish ownership of your body and your mind and of yourself. What we have been through actually lives in our bodies. And healing requires reconnecting with both the body and others. I'm learning more about this. It's quite fascinating. And I've had experiences where my body will have a reaction to something my mind hasn't fully processed, Has anyone ever had that experience? My body will have a reaction. I'm like, oh, wow. It took my mind a minute to catch up because the body keeps score. The body remembers. And I'm working through somatic abolitionism with some members of this community along with Riverside Church. And there are a few different groups working on this. And we are reading the book, My Grandmother's Hands, right? And there are 3 different groups. There's a white body group, there's a black body group or people of color group, and then there's a cultural group, right? And these different groups are working on healing from racialized trauma. It's been said that we are carrying things in our bodies from generations long ago, right? How is all of that, plus all the stuff that we're dealing with today, how is it impacting us? How is it helping us or not helping us with our interpersonal relationships and things of that nature? I believe that healing is here for us today, and there's so many different ways that we can exercise healing within our lives forefront. And I will tell you, if something doesn't work, try something else, right? It might be that you find healing in a small group within this community. It might come from walking in the park. It might come through reading affirming scripture. It might come through prayer. It might come through journaling. It might come through affirmations. And it could come through sound healing. And maybe some have tried that in their own lives. And if you haven't tried it, what we're going to do is try a little bit of sound healing today with one of our members. She's a volunteer, Jacqueline, and Kid Stuff. Come on up, Jacqueline. And I want to take us through it a little bit today, right, for us to try. I'm encouraging you to try it to your level of comfort, all right? And then I'll come back and we'll share communion together. But I would encourage you just to open yourself up to what else is possible as it relates to healing in your lives. God bless you.
You all hear me? How's everyone doing today? Good. So when Reverend Venida spoke to me about a week ago about coming on here and doing a meditation, leading this for you all, and she spoke about the topic of body shaming.
You can keep going.
I'll be honest, I never really considered it as part of my journey, right? Like all my life I've been relatively thin and, predisposed to a fast metabolism. But then that changed, and I really hadn't considered how much body shaming has been a part of my life, especially the past 5 or so years. And I started thinking about the moment I started becoming aware of my body, and it was in the 5th grade, and I was in dance. And it was the only year I was in dance. And I remember always feeling confident in my skin until I saw the other girls in my dance class so much thinner than I was. And we were, preparing for the recital, and everyone was getting their sizes for the recital. And I remember my size being slightly above theirs. And I remember a woman that worked at the dance studio pointing that out. And I remember ever since then, I was so concerned about being thin, to the point that when I was in high school, I joined track and then cross country. I was joining that not because of it being a sport to join, but I was joining that because I wanted to be thin. And then I was best friends with a girl in high school named Christina, and she would put herself on these really restrictive diets. So I told my dad that I think I'm gluten-free. I think I can only eat gluten-free. So I would do that for a few years, and I would get an endoscopy, and I would psychologically think that I had all these food sensitivities when I didn't, and I would stay thin for a while until I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder and anxiety, and I'd be put on medication, and I would gain weight rapidly, and my body would change, and my BMI would now be overweight. And then I would hear it from the doctor, and then I would hear it from my family. And even though I don't feel like I necessarily look overweight and I'm trying to be confident, it's so hard being positive in your own skin when you're hearing it in all directions. And even when people mean it well and they say, oh, you look like you lost weight, that doesn't feel so great, right? And even 2 days ago, I was with my younger brother, took him to Olive Garden. I don't know if any of y'all have been there before. It was a throwback for me. We're on the drive back home, and I tell him that, I've noticed I've been ordering takeout a lot. And he goes, I notice it too. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? And he's like, well, I can tell. You look a little, I can tell on your body. And I had a moment with him where I said, you do not talk about, especially a woman's body. And I had a whole I had preached it out to him, and he was very apologetic. But it made me think about how ingrained in our culture it is, how ingrained body shaming is in our culture. How every day I have to check in the mirror of how I look, right? What I have to wear, right? Every single moment. And it does prevent us from authentically showing up as we are, right? Showing our light to this world. So today I prepared a guided meditation for you all. I'm a licensed social worker. I also am Reiki certified and a yoga certified as well. And I also do sound healing. And it's truly been a gift to me. It's been a tool that I use to connect to my body. So I'll be taking in this energy with all of you today. So if you haven't meditated before, it's simply just being present with your breath. If you want to leave your eyes open for this meditation, you can, or you can leave them closed. But all I ask is that you're open to receiving and you listen to what your body needs. If you need to take a step out, you can. If you want to stay, you can. You might notice some tingling sensations during the sound healing. But the point of it is to really feel connected. So without further ado, I'm going to just move over here and we're going to get started. I welcome you to begin to close your eyes and place your feet on the floor. Maybe unclench your jaw, draw your shoulders back. And we're going to begin by taking a deep breath in your nose and letting it out your mouth slowly, allowing your body to soften, allowing your breath to anchor you here in this present moment. And as you close your eyes, I want you to bring your attention to your body. This body that carries you through every day, this body that holds strength, memory, and wisdom. As the sound vibrations move through the space, feel them wash over you from your head to your toes. And imagine these sounds gently dissolving any judgment, any shame, any harsh thought you may have held about your body. Repeat quietly to yourself or just listen and absorb. My body is enough. My body is worthy of love. I honor the journey my body has taken to bring me here. Notice your heartbeat. Notice the rhythm of your breath. This is your body, alive, present, sacred. Let gratitude rise within you. You are unique, you are whole, you are already beautiful. Taking in one final breath through your nose, the deepest inhale you've taken all day. And slowly exhale out of your mouth. own pace, you can bring your awareness back to the room. Wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes. And remember that the more that we're connected to the body, the more we're connected to the soul, the more we're connected to God, the more we're connected to our light, the more we can show up as our authentic self. Thank you all for letting me share this with you.